Do you ever feel pulled to do something that you know isn't good for you? And you can see the thought come up that says, no, I don't want to do that. But the desire for it doesn't go away. And a little teeny tiny part of you thinks, oh, but wouldn't it be nice if I did? And then you think, no, I don't want to do that. But 5, 10 minutes later, the feeling hasn't gone away, and suddenly you find yourself doing the thing that you didn't want to do. And you're like, how did I get here? And the worst part is that it doesn't feel good. And of course it doesn't feel good because you didn't want to do it. And it's disappointing. But you were aware of it, but it was like some sort of old shadow worked through you on autopilot, doing this old behavior that you didn't want to do. Well, today we're going to look at that, and we're going to figure out why this happens and what you can do to help. Hello, I'm Lewis, and I make videos on codependency, attachment theory, and all sorts of personal development topics. If that sounds like something you're interested in, then please hit like and subscribe. So I'm making this video because this happened to me. It happened to me yesterday. I knew that I wanted to shoot a video today. And I knew that there's certain behaviors that I need to do in order to really get my creative mojo on and be able to shoot a good video. I knew I was going to have a busy day yesterday, and so I needed to go to bed early, I needed to look after myself, I needed to wake up with intention. But for some reason, it was about 10:30, I was in bed, I was going to read, but then the feeling came up and it said, but what if you watched a YouTube video? And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. But it didn't go away. And I sort of paused and I watched myself. I was like, I am very conscious that I'm picking up my phone and I'm watching this YouTube video, but I couldn't pull myself out of doing it. And so I ended up staying up way later than I wanted to. My sleep hygiene was very poor. I just did a bunch of things that are not conducive to getting up in the morning and shooting a great video. I really thought that having the responsibility of this YouTube channel would help me sort of stop doing those behaviors that I know are bad for me, because it's really important to me to make this content. But it doesn't really help. But the plus side is that I got a good video idea. So pros and cons. But as I'm reflecting on this, I really realized that I'd fallen into quite a common trap, I think, on the healing journey process. And that's this idea of thinking that I will be done and that I will reach a stage where I'm going to be perfectly recovered and I'll never, ever, ever have to worry about all this work that it requires to actually stay happy and healthy. But it's never done. It doesn't go away. It gets easier, but it's not done. It's a constant effort of nurturing and looking after myself. Because I'm a human being, I live in the world, and there will always be pain and difficulties and then temptations that pop up to seduce me, to placate what's going on, but they're not really the way that I want to feel. And I've realized that it's not about becoming perfectly immune to making bad choices and always making the right choice. It's about becoming the sort of person that instills the habits and the ways of thinking and the broader aspects of life that mean I can live a healthier life. Because even for where I am now, it is a win just to notice the process and notice the consequences. And actually, when I was thinking about this, I realized that there's quite a lot of similarities in a healing journey to the unconscious and conscious learning competency model. So in the model, you've got 4 stages. You can be unconsciously incompetent, i.e. you don't know that you're bad at something. You can be consciously incompetent, so you're aware that you have no idea what you're doing, but you're trying. You can be consciously competent, meaning that you know what you're doing, but you have to really pay attention to it while you're doing it. And you can be unconsciously competent, meaning that it's second nature. I think a really good example of this is just remember how you learned how to drive. You didn't know how to drive. You struggled a lot trying to drive. You were able to drive, but it was really hard. And now you can just drive without thinking about it. Well, when you apply this to recovery, it really comes also in 4 stages. You've got unconsciously hurting yourself, which is that pre-therapy stage, that pre-recovery stage where you're just in it and you don't know what's going on and you're not even thinking about changing because you're not aware of any of that. And the good thing is, if you're watching this video, then you're probably out of that first stage and more like in the second stage, which is consciously hurting yourself. And I often find myself in this stage. In this stage, you're gaining an awareness of the things that you do and the choices that you make and how they hurt you and the consequences of them. But oftentimes, you'll still find that you act on autopilot, like there's this old sort of shadow within you that really craves something, even though you're trying to change out of it. But then after a while, with enough noticing and enough feeling the negative consequences of making choices that you don't enjoy, you might move to the third stage, which is consciously and really deliberately looking after yourself. Now, this step can take months or years to get to, but it's really when those behaviors, those habits, those thought patterns that you've wanted for so long have finally started taking shape. And you've become a person who has set their life up to sort of look after yourself. It's still a lot of work and you still need to practice it all the time and really deliberately and think about practicing it, but it's better. And apparently, if you do that for long enough, then you come to the fourth stage, which is unconsciously looking after yourself. It just becomes second nature. Imagine that. Imagine not even needing to deliberately think healthy thoughts or express healthy emotions. You just are a person who is healthy. Now, of course, this isn't a final state, and I just want to add a few caveats around this process and this sort of model. And the first one is that you are a human being and a healing journey is something that lasts a lifetime. There's no perfect end state of being and it will always require nurturing and work to look after yourself, especially as you go through different life phases. The second thing is that it's not a linear process. And sometimes you might think, with this behavior, I've really gotten to the point where I'm almost doing it unconsciously. It's just something that's naturally going really well for me. But then you might do some more work on yourself and uncover something that is a lot. And it might take you all the way back down to stage 1 or stage 2. And there's nothing to be ashamed of in that. It's normal and it's a healthy part of the recovery process. This happened to me the other day. I was about 8 months into therapy, 9 months. I've been doing really well. My anxiety levels were dropped. I've been working normally rather than overworking, and I've been building up little habits of paying attention to myself. But then a big important project came at work. It's like an important deadline where things need to be right, they need to be signed off. And I just felt myself slip back into the unhealthy ways of overworking, constantly worrying, feeling stressed about this big deadline. And for about 4 weeks, that was just me again, and I couldn't do anything about it. I noticed it all, but I couldn't do anything about it. But I did notice, and that was progress, because even a year ago, I wouldn't have noticed. And I think when you're trying to get from that noticing stage to consciously, deliberately looking after yourself, I recently learned a very powerful question that can help with that. And the question is this good for me? It is a very valuable thing to learn to ask, is this good for me? Is this what I want? Does this align with my needs? Cultivating this question is a form of self-respect, of self-love, and self-protection, because it will protect that little child in you that when you were growing up didn't quite get those needs met in the way that they needed, and they so desperately need you to pay attention to them and love them and give them their needs now. Where I struggle with this is not just even doing it, it's actually thinking and believing that it's a useful thing to do. It's making the shift to thinking that it's right and it's healthy and it's good for me to constantly be thinking about, is this good for me? Because it's not unhealthy selfishness to be focused on prioritizing your needs and asking, is this actually good for me? Pausing to check if something is good for you is a very normal and healthy human behavior, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. You can call it healthy self-interest or healthy self-compassion or healthy self-care, whatever term suits you and gets it into your brain, you know? Because when you really think about it, everyone is just doing this. Now, they might not be doing it in a very healthy way, but everyone is ultimately looking out for themselves. And if you're not doing that for you, then nobody else is. And this is why even when you hurt yourself, and even when you make choices, when you think, God, why did I even do that? You still need to notice and give yourself compassion for making choices that don't really align with what you want, but are just where you are right now. Because it's your responsibility to ask the question, is this good for me? Nobody else can ask it for you. Nobody else can check if that's something that's good for you and steer you away from it or take it away from you. And, of course, and ears up if you're codependent, it's also not your responsibility to do this for other people. But I think even if you get all the theory and you actually even start practicing it, the most difficult part that I've found is that some people won't like it. And as someone who's really healing from people-pleasing behaviours, it makes me feel sick to think that I might make a decision that is normal and healthy and right for me, but might go against what someone else or I think someone else wants. But I'm learning through a lot of trial and error that if someone else cares about you, then ultimately, if you are acting in a way that's in your best interest, it often works out in their best interest as well. So maybe, just for today, you could practice looking out for yourself. You could practice asking, is this good for me? You can do it throughout the day, even just once. Even if it goes against what other people might want. Even if it feels really hard for you to do. Because looking out for your best interests is the only way that you're going to really start flourishing on your healing journey and towards creating a happy and a healthy and a peaceful life. If you've gotten this far in the video, then thank you so much for watching. I wish you all the best on your healing journey, and I'll see you in the next one.